Investor Intelligence provides general information only. You should consider seeking independent advice to see how this information relates to your unique circumstances. Please refer to the terms and conditions available at investorintelligence.com.au for more.
Hello and welcome to a brand new and very special episode of Investor Intelligence, brought to you by the team here at the Property Mentors. It's your weekly podcast for all things investment, and this week hosted by me, Luke Harris. So as regular listeners would be aware, I'm a regular guest host on the podcast and the founder of the Property Mentors. This week I've taken over the hosting role to speak with a very special guest, Phoebe Wallace. Welcome, Phoebe.
Thank you, Luke. How strange is this?
Now, Phoebe, you would be normally the one hosting Investor Intelligence, but we have some sad but exciting news, as this will be your last episode. Tell us where you're off to.
It is very bittersweet news, yes. So I'm actually off to be a producer at Listener. So if anyone hasn't heard of Listener, it's Australia's #1 digital audio network and #1 commercial podcasting network. So massive opportunity for me. I'm very excited, but I am also very sad to leave my beloved TPM family.
Yes, and you've done an incredible job with the Investor Intelligence podcast and all your input, so we thank you for that. But obviously, as this is your last episode, we thought we'd do a special investor journey episode focused on yourself and what you've learnt in your time with Investor Intelligence. So to start, tell us, where was your investment knowledge prior to joining Investor Intelligence?
Almost non-existent. I think on a scale of 1 to 10, maybe 0.5 might even be a little bit generous. Right. Like prior to working here, I really hadn't paid much of attention to the investing world at all. I think the only knowledge I really had came from maybe being a renter and dealing with property managers, both good and bad. But yeah, when I started, really next to nothing. I was very fresh with that.
Yeah, but you did have an interest in investing and wanting to be involved in the type of podcast that we run. So I guess when you started and obviously being involved in the investment space, what's been your biggest challenge?
So I think my biggest challenge would be, coming from a background that was strictly podcasting and not investing. The biggest challenge would have been being able to turn, the information that we wanted to put out into digestible content for others. So, at times I felt really overwhelmed that maybe me not being an expert in the field would almost hinder the quality of the episodes. And so I would do my research, I would look at other podcasts, and through that, I kind of felt that, and, this is no offense to other investing podcasts, but I felt a little excluded listening to them. I felt like there were experts talking to experts. And so through that, it sort of made more and more sense for the hosts to be learning along the way, which is kind of how we started to structure our episodes because, as someone who came in with no knowledge, if I was sort of learning along the way, chances are our listeners were too. So I think that would have been the biggest challenge, just feeling like I was asking the right questions and that they were actually educating people along the way, which is, of course, our aim with Investor Intelligence.
Absolutely. And look, when you went through the process of structuring the questions and finding the experts, I guess, to put on to Investor Intelligence, I think that's helped all of our listeners and, of course, yourself to grow on that journey. And I think the big thing with investing is that it is a journey. Nobody knows everything, myself included in that. And, there's always another level with investing. So even if you're just starting out listening to our very first episode or listening to episode 10 or episode 50 or episode 75, there's another level that you can always learn. So you'll never know it all. So regardless of whether you're hosting a podcast or whether you're a guest listening to the podcast, there's always going to be another level. So you'll never know it all, always more to learn. So that's fantastic that you've learned a lot on this journey, and I'm sure plenty more to learn on your journey to go.
Plenty more to learn.
And exciting as well. So how's your investment knowledge and even your podcast knowledge going now on how to structure a podcast and your investment knowledge in general from where you started?
Wildly different. I think if I start with investing, I couldn't probably put a number on it because, as you've just said, it's constantly changing. I'm still learning something new every day. I'm not going to sit here and say I'm an expert by any means, but if 2021 me was told that in 2 years, I would know how tax depreciation works, or what the difference is between a buyer's advocate and a property mentor, or what refinancing your property means, and how things like interest rates and inflation affect so many things, the list is endless. But I truly wouldn't have believed that if you'd told me 2 years ago. And what I've also kind of loved learning about is, everything I've just listed then was probably more investing knowledge, but also learning about the investor side of things. So, the mindset that one needs to be a successful investor, why it's so important to have really clear goals from the get-go. Even things like, how do you communicate best with people, which from the outset might seem kind of irrelevant, but can be so relevant to, how your portfolio is successful or not. As far as podcasting, I've learned so much. I think I've really been able to hone and refine all my skills that I have through investor intelligence, whether that's planning, whether that's hosting, editing, so on. But most importantly, I think I hope I've learned how to make investing content understandable, palatable and engaging for our listeners. And these are all just incredibly valuable skills that I'll definitely be taking with me to the next role.
Yeah, fantastic. And I do agree with your earlier comment on a lot of property and investment-based podcasts are quite dull and boring. Yeah. And like you said, they are actually focused on, professionals speaking to other professionals, or experts speaking to other experts. And it's not really, I guess, presented in a way that people can understand. And really, you've done a fantastic job at doing that. And I know that the feedback has been incredible. So
yeah. And that's not to, offend any of the other podcasts, of course. Sometimes when you are an expert, you sort of forget how much you know. But I do find it sort of just excludes those people who are really starting out. They're really not understanding the jargon yet. So that was kind of really always one of my aims with investor intelligence, was to really just make sure everyone felt included in it.
Absolutely. And you've done an incredible job at doing that.
Thank you.
So what's your favorite thing at the Property Mentors, and what have you learnt whilst you've been at Investor Intelligence?
I love this question. I always love asking this question to our members who come on the podcast. I think it might be a really simple answer, but I think the 3 types of ready have always been the favorite thing that I've learned. So the educational readiness, the emotional readiness, and the financial readiness. I, like many people, came in thinking that you only need the finances to be an investor. And, as long as you're buying any multiple properties, you'll be successful. So obviously that's not the case. And, even who would have thought emotions come into investing?
Oh, absolutely.
But what I think I love about the 3 types of readiness is that they really are just at the core of all of this. And not only will you always kind of be working on them, there's something that you can sort of keep going back to no matter, where you're feeling you're at. So, whether it's to just even boost your confidence, reassure yourself. And if you have a mentor, knowing that you're not having to navigate them by yourself. So I think because they're at the core of everything, that's really been my favorite thing I've learned.
Yeah, fantastic. And these understanding your thought process with these things, it's something that you can implement in other areas of your life, with your health and fitness, your career and your work life, as well as your investing career as well. So it's
100%.
The good thing about learning and education, and why we focus so heavily on that, is that you can't unlearn this stuff.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So it's a really powerful thing. So yeah, thanks for sharing that. And that's fantastic. So what I'd like to do now, Phoebe, that you've shared all of your personal journey with us, thank you. Now I'd like to introduce another special guest to this episode who will be taking the reins from Phoebe as of next week. So welcome to the studio, Jacob Kearns.
Hi, Phoebe. Hi, Luke.
So Jacob, you've been a part of the TPM team now, the Property Mentors team, for a while now, working alongside Phoebe and Aaron in our content and member experience team. Tell us a little bit about yourself.
Yeah, it's been great. I've always had a strong interest in financial markets. I started investing in the stock market since I turned 18, made some money, also lost some money. And with some of that money that I made from investing in shares, I was able to save up a deposit and take over the lease from my mum, which I was lucky enough to do So I got started in property investing at a relatively young age. But like a lot of people, I didn't really have a proper strategy behind my investing. I was really just doing it to try and make money. I was, trying to learn as much as I could along the way, but I didn't have any mentors or experts with me to give me that guidance, which I now know obviously how important that is. And from there, after I finished school, I went on to study a Bachelor of Finance and Economics. But while studying, I was very much interested in that sort of thing. But while studying, I developed an interest in marketing and business as well, and really just the psychology behind why people buy things and why people behave like they do. And through studying that led me to go on and start my own e-commerce brand. I dabbled in that a little bit, and since then just really learning and soaking up as much knowledge as I can about investing, business, finance, and yeah, now here I am.
Fantastic. So you're well placed to have I guess you've done the groundwork and you're well placed to really take on this new challenge for yourself. What's been your favorite thing that you've learned through obviously listening to Phoebe's podcast at Investor Intelligence and obviously working with the mentor team at the Property Mentors?
Yeah, so two things really come to mind. And the first, more specific to property investing, is really just how the market dynamic works. So people, often the media, talk about the Australian property market as one thing, but the reality is that prices are a function of supply and demand. So you can have areas that still achieve capital growth as long as there's demand for that. And that's what we've seen with recently the interest rates going up. You still have pockets of Australia that are experiencing that capital demand, whether it be because they've got demand from job nodes, from infrastructure, educational facilities such as schools and universities around. So I think that's a part of property investing that people often overlook. They get scared by interest rates or this or that, and they really just forget that there's always a demand for property because it's a necessity. People need somewhere to live.
Yep, fantastic. So I guess to summarize, the thing that you've learnt the most of is that obviously with the right supply and demand fundamentals, there's going to be always a demand for property.
Exactly. And the second thing that's really changed my perspective since I've been here is something that we've discussed on the podcast, and that's the actual need for people to be investing. One of our most recent podcasts was with yourself, Luke, Phoebe, and Pat, where you discussed how many people go into retirement and it's not the golden years that people really think it is, including myself. The reality is that a lot of people just don't have the funds that they need to have the retirement that they want. And they're stressing and worrying about whether they can leave anything behind for their children. They might have to go back to work. They might have to sell their family home and move back in with a relative. And that's scary stuff. It was actually quite eye-opening for me realizing that the amount of people that actually live off that $200, $300 a week pension in retirement. And that was a reality check for me, I guess.
For a lot of people, yeah.
Yeah, and a good thing to learn at a young age as well, because there's new media articles coming out this week even of them talking about lifting the retirement age to 70. So to learn that now is a great thing to be aware of. What are you most looking forward to, Jacob, hosting Investor Intelligence?
Well, I'm really excited to take over the amazing work that Phoebe has done and just continue on producing outstanding content that educates our listeners, continue having really great guests on, and just keep adding value to our audience.
Fantastic. So before we finish up, as we like to ask all of our guests, and before you leave us, Phoebe, if you were a mentor, what would your key piece of advice be?
Ooh, my key piece of advice. I think it's just to get started. Take any first step that will get you closer to your investing goals. that could be something as simple as reading a book on investing. For example, Property Fit or Let's Get Real are really great examples of that. It could be just listening to a podcast episode. It could be looking up the definition of something that you hear and, you don't fully understand. It could also be booking a discovery call with one of our mentors so that they can ask you the right questions and give you a better understanding of where you are and what your first step could be. I would also add to that and say that, it's okay if you don't feel ready, and chances are that you're never going to. I think that feeling of being ready is, mostly in our heads, in the sort of ideal worlds that we make up in there. There's just so much that you can do to take a first step, and you should find comfort in knowing that when you have the right team around you, that any step you will take won't feel like a risk, but it'll always feel like an educated and experienced progression to where you want to be. So just get started, do something.
Yeah, fantastic. And I agree with all of that. Well, Phoebe, thank you so much, sincerely, from myself and the whole team here at the Property Mentors and Investor Intelligence, for the work that you've put in behind the scenes to take this podcast from a random idea that I had many years ago to a reality with thousands and thousands of listens each month. The website looks fantastic. We've got some really good guests that are booked in for the second half of the year and also have already had on the podcast. And we look forward to staying in touch, and we really do appreciate your efforts. So, Jacob, good luck to you. You've got big shoes to fill, and all the best, Phoebe, and welcome aboard, Jacob.
Thank you, Luke. I'm excited.
Thank you. And I will just say thank you so much for this opportunity. It's been so much fun. Luke, you've been such a pleasure to learn from, such a pleasure to work with, and you're just such an incredible leader to the whole TPM team. I know there are areas, of investing that can seem a little dry to learn about, but I feel like you've always made them, every aspect, so enjoyable to learn about. You're clearly very passionate about what you do, and to see you help others achieve their dreams has just been an honor to witness. And a massive, massive thank you to our listeners too. Thank you so much for coming along this journey with me. I hope you've learned as much as I have, and I hope Investor Intelligence has really inspired you in some way or another to take that first step in your investing journey. And of course, best of luck to you, Jacob. You've got a very inquisitive mind, and I know that'll make you an incredible host. And I feel our listeners are in very good hands with you.
Thank you, Phoebe. You will definitely be missed, not just in the office, but I'm sure by our listeners as well.
Thanks, guys.
Oh, pulling on my heartstrings, Phoebe.
No crying.
If you found this episode or any of our episodes helpful, please make sure to share and leave a rating to help us reach more people on their investing journeys. And of course, subscribe to be notified when new episodes drop. Make sure to follow the podcast on Instagram at Investor Intelligence Podcast. You can find links to our other socials in the show notes, including a link to the Property Mentors weekly blog. If you're ready to get your property portfolio in shape for financial freedom, check out Luke's latest book, Property Fit. You can get yourself a copy at www.propertyfitbook.com.au.